Pip had never understood why the Galactic Council allowed a Death Worlder into the Academy. 3 months after Danny Wells arrived, Pip still slept with one eye open, even though the human had never shown any sign of aggression. Humans were simply too unpredictable. They came from a planet where the very air could poison you, where water fell from the sky without warning, and where giant predators roamed every continent. Yet here was Danny, sitting in comparative biology class, looking completely bored. Professor Lyrian's crystalline body pulsed with soft blue light as she addressed the lecture hall. 200 students from 47 different species sat in curved rows, all watching the tall Thessan instructor with respect. All except Danny, who was drawing something on his tablet. This semester's final assignment, Professor Lyrian announced, her light patterns translating into spoken words through the room systems, will be a presentation on childhood development. Each of you will describe a typical day from your youth on your homeworld. Excited murmurs spread through the hall. Pip's small, furry body relaxed. This was an easy assignment. He would talk about being carried in his mother's pouch, learning to identify safe foods, and sleeping in a family burrow surrounded by 17 siblings. Simple and pleasant memories. A Thessan student raised a crystalline arm. Professor, should we focus on educational activities or recreational ones? Both, Lyrian replied. The goal is to help your classmates understand how different species prepare their young for galactic citizenship. Danny finally looked up from his tablet. He seemed confused, like the assignment was too simple to be real. After class, Pip gathered his courage and approached his human roommate. Danny was almost twice his height, with strange soft skin and those unsettling forward-facing eyes that marked him as a predator species. But Danny had never tried to eat Pip, and he always remembered to move slowly, so he would not trigger Pip's flight instincts. Danny, Pip said, his translator struggling with the human name, what will you present? The human shrugged. I don't know. Just regular kid stuff, I guess. Playing outside, going to school, that kind of thing. Playing outside. Pip's fur stood slightly on end. Outside your dwelling? Yeah, of course. We spent most of our time outside when I was a kid. Pip tried to imagine it. Earth was classified as a Category 12 death world. The planet had extreme temperature variations, a toxic oxygen-rich atmosphere, and more dangerous predators than any 10 normal worlds combined. And human children went outside. What about predators? Pip asked carefully. Danny laughed. It was a strange barking sound that had frightened Pip badly the first time he heard it. We don't really have predators in neighborhoods. Well, I mean, there are dogs, but they're not dangerous. Pip had seen images of earth dogs. They were large creatures with sharp teeth and powerful jaws, descended from wolves, which were pack hunters capable of taking down prey many times their size. Dogs are not dangerous. Pip repeated. Nah, they're pets. I had one growing up. His name was Buster. He was the sweetest boy. Danny's face changed in a way Pip had learned meant happiness. He used to sleep in my bed. Pip felt faint. A human child sharing a sleeping space with a predator. This had to be some kind of joke. I think, Pip said slowly, your presentation will be very interesting. Danny shrugged again. It's just normal stuff. Honestly, I'm worried it'll be too boring compared to everyone else. Over the next 2 weeks, students prepared their presentations. Pip watched Danny work on his with growing concern. The human collected images and videos from his family back on Earth, smiling at memories that made Pip's heart race with fear that a Thessan student talked about growing new crystalline limbs in carefully temperature-controlled mineral baths. A Vilori described the peaceful decades spent as a juvenile, floating in nutrient pools while slowly developing consciousness. A Torvax from High Gravity World explained the reinforced nurseries that protected their young from their own planet's crushing force. Every presentation was calm and safe. Every species, it seemed, went to great lengths to protect their offspring from harm. Then Professor Lyrian called Danny's name. The human walked to the front of the lecture hall, looking relaxed. Pip noticed that several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Deathworlders made everyone nervous, even when they were just standing still. Danny connected his tablet to the display system. A bright image appeared on the screen behind him. It showed green plants, blue sky, and a small dwelling with what looked like an outdoor habitat behind it. "So this is where I grew up," Danny said casually. "Pretty normal house with a backyard. That's where I spent most of my childhood." Pip squinted at the image. The outdoor area had no visible barriers, no force fields, no protective covering of any kind. Raw, unfiltered sunlight poured down from the sky. And there, in the corner of the image, sat a large four-legged predator with its mouth open, showing rows of sharp teeth that a student in the front row made a sound of distress. "Oh, that's Buster," Danny said, noticing what they were looking at. "He was a good dog, totally harmless." Professor Lyrian's crystalline body flickered with an uncertain light pattern. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "you could start from the beginning of a typical day?" Danny nodded. "Sure. So basically, I would wake up, eat breakfast, and then go outside to play until dinner." He said it like it was nothing, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Pip gripped the edges of his seat. He had a feeling this presentation was going to be very different from the others. The lecture hall had never been so quiet. Danny stood at the front, looking at 200 frozen faces, wondering if his tablet had malfunctioned. He glanced back at the screen showing his childhood backyard. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Professor Lyrian's crystalline form pulsed with colors Danny had learned meant confusion and concern. "You said the children went outside? Without supervision?" "Well, my parents were inside the house. They could see us through the window, through glass." A tall Vekari student spoke up, his three eyes blinking rapidly. "Glass provides no protection." Danny was not sure what they expected glass to protect against, but he decided to continue. He switched to the next image. It showed a sunny park filled with colorful structures made of metal and plastic. "This is a playground," Danny explained. "There's one in almost every neighborhood on Earth. Kids go here to play." The image showed human children climbing on structures, swinging through the air on chains, and sliding down steep metal slopes. Several students in the audience shifted in visible discomfort that a Corelli student raised a trembling paw. "What is the purpose of this facility?" "Physical training for combat." "What?" "No, it's just for fun." Danny pointed at the image. "See, those are swings. You sit on the seat and pump your legs to go higher. And that's a slide. You climb up the ladder and slide down. And those are monkey bars, where you swing from bar to bar using your hands." Professor Lyrian leaned forward. "And adults are supervising these activities? They're not professionals." "Sometimes there's a parent watching, but usually kids just play on their own. I mean, by the time you're 6 or 7, you don't really need someone watching you on the playground." The room erupted in distressed sounds. A Thessan student's crystalline body began vibrating at a high frequency. Two small Minari students huddled together, their large eyes filled with horror. Danny felt more confused than ever. "Did I say something wrong?" "Perhaps," Professor Lyrian said, her voice carefully controlled. "You could explain what happens when a child falls from these structures." "Oh, kids fall all the time. You just get back up." Danny smiled at a memory. "I fell off the monkey bars when I was 7. Scraped my knee pretty bad. There was blood everywhere." A Vilori student in the middle section made a wet, gurgling sound and began moving toward the exit. Danny watched the gelatinous being squeezed through the door, clearly upset. "Blood," Professor Lyrian repeated. "The child was injured badly enough to bleed. What medical intervention was required?" "My mom just cleaned it and put a bandage on it. It healed in like a week." "No regeneración tank." "No cellular repair treatment. We don't really have those on Earth. Humans just heal naturally." The lecture hall fell silent again. Danny could feel hundreds of eyes staring at him like he had just admitted to something terrible. He saw Pip in the crowd, his small furry friend covering his face with both paws. I in the back row, a large reptilian student stood up. Danny recognized him as Brill, a Torvax from one of the few other planets classified as difficult. Torvax came from a high-gravity world and were considered tough by galactic standards. "You are saying," Brill rumbled, his translator giving his voice a deep mechanical tone, "that human adults deliberately place their offspring in dangerous situations? For entertainment." "It's not dangerous," Danny insisted. "It's just playing." Brill made a sound that might have been a laugh. I am from a world where the gravity would crush most species. We're not soft, but even we do not allow our children to fall from heights and bleed. Danny decided to try a different approach. He switched to a new image showing himself as a small child, sitting on a strange two-wheeled device. This is me learning to ride a bike. It's a human vehicle that you balance on while pedaling with your legs. It has no stabilization system, observed a technically minded Creth student. Right? You have to balance yourself. That's why it takes practice. You fall down a lot when you're learning. He switched to another image. This one showed his arm with a long pale scar running from elbow to wrist. See this? I got it when I was 9. I was riding too fast and crashed into a fence. Needed 12 stitches. Professor Lyrian's colors shifted to something Danny had never seen before. You still have the scar? After all these years? Yeah, scars are normal for humans. Most adults have a few from childhood accidents. Accidents, Lyrian repeated. Multiple accidents. Throughout childhood. This is considered normal on your world. Danny nodded. How else would you learn to be careful? The question hung in the air. 2 more students quietly left the room. Professor Lyrian excused herself for a moment and spoke rapidly into a communication device. Danny caught the words Counselor Marin and immediate consultation. He looked back at the sea of horrified faces and felt a strange sensation in his stomach. He was only on his 3rd slide. He had not even gotten to the interesting parts yet. Counselor Marin arrived 12 minutes into Danny's presentation. The Vylori administrator flowed through the lecture hall doors like living water, her gelatinous body shifting colors as she processed the distress signals from students throughout the room. She positioned herself near the exit, ready to assist anyone who needed to leave. Danny had paused his presentation while Professor Lyrian composed herself. The Thessan instructor's crystalline form was cycling through colors that suggested deep internal conflict, like she wanted to stop the presentation, but also could not look away. Please continue, Lyrian finally said. I believe the class needs to understand. Danny shrugged and brought up his next image. It showed a group of human children in a body of water, their heads bobbing above the surface while an adult stood at the edge watching them. So this is a swimming pool. Most human children learn to swim when they're pretty young, usually around 5 or 6 years old. A Tessari student, whose species lived exclusively in desert environments, raised a thin arm. The children are submerged in liquid? Voluntarily, it's just water. Earth is 70% water, so swimming is an important skill. What happens if a child cannot swim? Professor Lyrian asked. Danny paused, realizing this was a serious question. Well, they could drown. That's why we teach them young and always have adults watching. But accidents happen, Lyrian pressed. You said earlier that accidents are normal in human childhood. Drowning isn't really common if you're careful. Most kids figure it out pretty quickly. Humans are actually pretty good swimmers for land animals. Pip had moved to the edge of his seat, his large eyes fixed on the image. Danny, is the water cold? Sometimes. The pool in this picture is heated, but lakes and rivers can be pretty cold. We swim in those too. Danny smiled at a memory. There's this thing called a polar plunge, where people jump into frozen lakes in winter. My uncle does it every year. The room went completely silent. Even Counselor Marin stopped moving. Frozen, Professor Lyrian said flatly. Humans voluntarily enter frozen water. It's kind of a tradition. You jump in, your body goes into shock for a second, and then you get out and warm up. It's supposed to be good for you. Danny looked at his audience. Half of them seemed to have stopped breathing. He decided to move on to something less controversial. Okay, so after swimming, a typical day might include some sports. He brought up an image of children playing soccer. This is football, or soccer as we call it in my country. 2 teams try to kick a ball into the other team's goal. The image showed children running at full speed, colliding with each other, falling to the ground, and getting back up to continue playing. One child in the picture had grass stains covering half his uniform. Brill the Torvax stood up again. Those children are engaged in combat simulation. Look at the physical contact, the aggressive pursuit. It's not combat, it's just sports. It's fun. Human fun involves repeated physical collisions. Danny thought about it. I mean, yeah, a lot of sports do. Football, basketball, hockey, wrestling, martial arts. He trailed off as the room's tension increased with each word. Professor Lyrian held up a hand. Let us focus on one thing at a time. You mentioned wrestling. Human children engage in wrestling? Sure, lots of kids do wrestling in school. I did it for 2 years. You learn how to take someone down, pin them, escape from holds. It's good exercise. Children are taught to physically dominate other children. As part of education, Danny was starting to understand why his presentation was causing such a reaction, but he was not sure how to explain that none of this was as bad as it sounded. It's controlled. There are rules and referees. You wear protective gear and you're matched with kids your own size. He paused. And honestly, the bruises don't really hurt that much. Bruises, Counselor Marin repeated, speaking for the first time. Human children regularly sustain bruises from authorized educational activities, and scrapes and sometimes sprains. One kid in my class broke his arm during practice, but that was pretty unusual. A small Minari student in the front row began crying quietly. Her companion led her out of the room. Danny watched them go, feeling genuinely bad. He had not meant to upset anyone. He looked at Pip, hoping for some guidance, but his roommate just stared at him with an expression of pure disbelief. Maybe I should skip ahead, Danny offered. No, Professor Lyrian said firmly. Continue. I think the class needs to hear everything. Danny sighed and brought up the next image. It showed a backyard at night, lit by the warm glow of a fire, with children sitting around it roasting food on sticks. So this is a bonfire. Humans like to build fires outside and sit around them. It's especially fun at night. He did not understand why everyone started making distress sounds again. He had not even gotten to the part about marshmallows yet. The image of children sitting around an open fire had caused 3 more students to leave the room. Danny stood at the front of the lecture hall, wondering if maybe he should have prepared a different presentation. Perhaps something about human technology or space exploration. Something that did not make aliens cry. Those children, Professor Lyrian said slowly, are sitting within arm's reach of an open combustion reaction. It's just a campfire. The flames aren't that big, and the adults allow this. The adults are usually the ones who build the fire. Danny pointed at the image. See those sticks the kids are holding? They're roasting marshmallows. You put the marshmallow in the fire until it gets all melted and gooey. It's delicious. You put food into fire, Brill said flatly. Then you eat it. That's basically how cooking works, yeah. Danny decided to move on before anyone else left. He switched to an image of a birthday party. The picture showed a small human child sitting at a table covered in decorations, facing a round cake topped with small burning candles. This is a birthday party. Every year on the anniversary of your birth, humans celebrate with cake and presents. That seems pleasant, Counselor Marin said, sounding relieved. And we put candles on the cake and light them on fire. Then the birthday kid blows them out and makes a wish. The relief evaporated from Marin's gelatinous form. You place open flames on food. Then a child blows on the fire. With their respiratory system, it's tradition. The candles aren't dangerous. They're literally fire. Danny could not argue with that logic, so he moved to his next topic. He brought up an image of himself as a toddler, hugging a large golden retriever that was almost as big as he was. This is me with Buster. I mentioned him earlier. He was my dog. The lecture hall, which had briefly calmed down, tensed up again. Danny could see students gripping their seats and leaning away from the screen. You were allowed to touch the predator, a Vekari student said. At that age, Buster was gentle. He would never hurt me. How did you ensure this? I didn't ensure anything. He just loved me. Dogs bond with their human families. They become protective. Buster used to sleep at the foot of my bed every night. If I had a nightmare, he would come up and lick my face until I felt better. Professor Lyrian's crystalline form flickered. The predator was in your sleeping chamber, while you were unconscious and vulnerable. That's when I felt safest. Actually, I knew Buster would bark if anyone tried to break in. So you kept the predator for security purposes? Danny shook his head. No, we kept him because we loved him. He was part of the family. When he died, my whole family cried for days. His voice softened at the memory. He was the best dog. The room went quiet in a different way. Danny could see some students exchanging confused glances, like they could not understand how a prey species could moor a predator. Pip raised a trembling paw. Danny, how do humans train these predators? To not attack. You don't really train them not to attack. Dogs just naturally bond with their pack. And when you raise them from puppies, your family becomes their pack. They would die to protect you. So the predators become protectors, Counselor Marin said, making notes on her tablet. Through emotional bonding. Exactly. Dogs and humans have lived together for like 30,000 years. We evolved together. They need us, and we need them. Danny switched to another image. This one showed himself at around 10 years old, standing in a forest clearing. He was wearing a large backpack and smiling broadly. This is from a camping trip. My family used to go camping every summer. Camping, Professor Lyrian repeated. Explain this term. You go out into the wilderness, set up a tent, and sleep outside for a few nights. You cook food over a fire, go hiking during the day, maybe swim in a lake if there's one nearby. The Thesson instructor's light patterns went completely still. You take children into uncontrolled natural environments and sleep there, in fabric structures. Tents keep the bugs out and protect you from rain. What about predators? Wild animals? Toxic plants? Environmental hazards? Danny considered the question. I mean, you have to be careful. We hung our food in trees so bears wouldn't get it. And you always check for snakes before reaching into bushes. But as long as you follow basic safety rules, camping is pretty safe. Basic safety rules, Brill repeated, for surviving in the wilderness. These rules are taught to children. Sure, don't pet wild animals. Don't eat plants you can't identify. Make noise while hiking so you don't surprise bears. Store food properly. Stay on marked trails. Danny shrugged. It's common sense. Counselor Marin had stopped taking notes. She was staring at Danny with an expression he could not read. Human children, she said slowly, are taught wilderness survival skills as part of normal education. It's not really formal education. Your parents just teach you stuff, or you learn it at summer camp. Summer camp. Danny realized he had opened a whole new topic. He took a deep breath. That's where kids go for a week or two during summer break. You stay in cabins in the woods with other kids your age. Adults supervise, but kids basically take care of themselves. You learn to build fires, use knives safely, swim, canoe, do archery. He trailed off as he noticed Professor Lyrian's crystalline structure beginning to vibrate. It was the Thessan equivalent of hyperventilating. I think, the professor said carefully, we need a short break before continuing. The break lasted 20 minutes. During that time, Danny sat alone at the front of the lecture hall while the remaining students huddled in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. He caught fragments of conversation. Unbelievable. How did they survive as a species? And no wonder they conquered their planet. Danny did not feel like a conqueror. He felt like someone who had accidentally walked into a room and said exactly the wrong thing. Except he still was not sure what the wrong thing was. Professor Lyrian returned with Counselor Marin and two other administrators Danny did not recognize. They positioned themselves around the room like they were preparing for some kind of emergency. Mr. Wells, Lyrian said formally, the administration has requested that you complete your presentation. We believe it contains important educational value. Please continue. Danny nodded and brought up his next image. It showed a typical elementary school building, brick walls with large windows and a fenced outdoor area. So this is a human school. Kids attend for about 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for most of the year. What subjects do they study? A Creth student asked. Reading, writing, math, science, history, art, music, physical education. Physical education, Professor Lyrian repeated. More combat training? Not really combat. You play games, run, do exercises. It keeps you healthy. Danny thought for a moment. Oh, and there's recess. Recess. It's a break during the school day. Kids go outside and play for like 30 minutes. Unsupervised play. A few teachers watch, but mostly kids just do whatever they want. Play tag, kickball, jump rope, hang out with friends. Brill leaned forward. Human schools release children into uncontrolled outdoor environments multiple times per day, and this is considered educational. It gives kids a chance to burn off energy and socialize. Studies show it actually helps them learn better. Danny switched to another image. This one showed a teenage girl standing in front of a small vehicle. This is my sister on the day she got her driver's license. Humans can legally operate vehicles at age 16 in most places. The room went dead silent. Children operate machinery, a Tessari student whispered. Teenagers. And cars aren't that complicated. You take classes and pass a test. These vehicles move at what speed? Danny did the mental conversion. Highway speed is about 120 kilometers per hour. Several students made sounds of distress. Even Brill looked unsettled. Professor Lyrian held up a hand. We will return to this topic later. Please continue with your original presentation, Mr. Wells. Danny decided to skip ahead to something that seemed harmless. Okay, so this is a sleepover. It's when kids go stay at their friends' houses overnight. Human parents allow their offspring to sleep in other humans' dwellings. Counselor Marin asked, Sure, all the time. You eat pizza, watch movies, stay up late talking. It's fun. And the other family are trusted. They're your friend's parents. Of course they're trusted. The concept seemed to confuse the aliens more than anything else Danny had described. He saw them exchanging glances, trying to process the idea that humans voluntarily place their children in the care of other humans outside their immediate family. This level of social trust, Professor Lyrian said slowly, is remarkable. Is it? It seems normal to me. On most worlds, offspring remain exclusively with their biological family unit until maturity. The idea of transferring them to strangers is, she searched for the right word, unthinkable. Friends aren't strangers, but they are not family. Danny thought about all the nights he had spent at his friends' houses, eating dinner with their families, being treated like another child in the household. He thought about how his own parents had always welcomed his friends, feeding them and looking after them like they were their own. I guess, Danny said slowly, humans have big families, even when we're not related by blood. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Less horrified, more thoughtful. Danny decided to end his presentation with one final image. It showed a group of children lying on their backs on a grassy hill, staring up at a night sky filled with stars. This is from that camping trip I mentioned. We hiked up a hill at night to look at the stars. No lights around, so you could see everything. The Milky Way looked like someone had spilled glitter across the sky. You took children outside at night, Counselor Marin said, in the wilderness, to look at stars. It was beautiful. We lay there for hours just talking about space and wondering what was out there. Danny smiled. That night is probably why I want to come here, to the academy, to actually see what was out there. He looked around the room at all the alien faces staring back at him. And now I'm here, because my parents let me go outside and play. The video of Danny's presentation spread across the galactic network within 3 days. It was shared by scientists studying xenobiology, educators developing interspecies curricula, and military analysts trying to understand why humans had proven so effective in galactic affairs. Within a week, it had been viewed more than 2 billion times. Danny found the attention confusing. He had just talked about playing outside and eating birthday cake, but the galaxy saw something else. They saw a species that did not try to eliminate danger from childhood. They saw parents who taught their young to face fear instead of hide from it. They saw children who fell down, got hurt, and got back up again, over and over, until getting back up became automatic. Professor Lyrian requested a private meeting with Danny a week after his presentation. They met in her office, a room filled with carefully controlled lighting that kept her crystalline body comfortable. I wanted to thank you, she said, her light patterns conveying sincerity. Your presentation has changed how I understand Deathworlders. I still don't really understand what I said that was so special. Lyrian's colors shifted thoughtfully. Most species protect their young from all danger. We build barriers, create controlled environments, eliminate risk. We believe this is how we help them survive. That makes sense. But humans do something different. You teach your children that danger exists and cannot always be avoided. You teach them to face it, manage it, learn from it. Her light patterns brightened. You do not create adults who have never experienced pain. You create adults who know how to handle it. Danny thought about all the times he had fallen off bikes, lost at sports, failed at things he tried. He thought about how each failure had taught him something, made him stronger or smarter or more careful. I guess we figure kids need to learn how the world works, he said. And the world isn't always safe. Earth is never safe, Lyrian corrected. Your world is actively hostile. Yet humans did not hide from it. You sent your children out to play in it. Because hiding wasn't an option. If we hid, we'd never learn anything. That evening, Danny found Pip waiting outside his room. The small, furry Corelli was shifting his weight nervously, his large eyes blinking rapidly. Danny, I've been thinking about your presentation. Okay, the swimming. In your images, the children looked happy in the water. Swimming is fun once you learn how. Pip took a deep breath. The academy has a low-gravity pool in the recreation center. The water is warm and very shallow. I was wondering if... He trailed off. Danny smiled. You want to learn to swim? I want to try. I want to know what it feels like to face something scary and do it anyway. That's probably the most human thing I've ever heard you say. Pip's fur rippled in what Danny had learned was a Corelli blush. You have influenced me. Perhaps too much. They walked together toward the recreation center. Other students watched them pass, their eyes lingering on the human and his small alien friend. Danny, Pip said as they walked, may I ask you something? Sure. Were you ever afraid? When you were a child, doing all those things? Danny thought about it honestly. All the time. I was scared of the deep end of the pool, scared of falling off my bike, scared of the dark, scared of losing at sports. I was scared of everything. But you did it anyway. That's kind of the point. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. He looked down at his small friend. That's what my parents taught me. That's what every human parent teaches their kids. They reached the recreation center. Through the transparent walls, Danny could see the low-gravity pool, its water floating in gentle curves instead of lying flat. Pip stared at it for a long moment. His paws were trembling. I am scared, he admitted. Danny put a hand on his friend's small shoulder. I know, but I'll be right there with you. And if you start to sink, I'll catch you. That's what friends do. Pip looked up at him. Is this how humans conquered their death world? By catching each other? Danny thought about his family, his friends, every person who had ever helped him get back up after he fell. Yeah, he said. That's exactly how he did it. They walked into the recreation center together. Behind them, a Thescent student watched and began recording on her tablet. By morning, the video of a human teaching a Corelli to swim would have 10 million views. The galaxy was beginning to understand something important about Deathworlders. They were not survivors because they were strong or aggressive or fearless. They were survivors because they taught each other to face fear together, and that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they could destroy, because they could endure, because they could always get back up.